Welcome back to Two Pretty Good Bad Men, an Alias Smith & Jones podcast. I'm your capitalist swine of a host, Tabitha, and today we are covering Season 2, Episode 17, The Man Who Broke the Bank at Red Gap. This episode was shot mid-December 1971, and it aired January 20th, 1972. The story was by Roy Huggins, and the teleplay was by Huggins and Bronson Howitzer. Howitzer was a pseudonym, according to IMDb. His real name was Rick Hardman. I couldn't find much information about him. He doesn't have many IMDb credits to his name, but the ones he does are mostly westerns. He wrote for Rawhide, Laredo, Frontier Circus, Cheyenne, and Sugarfoot. He also wrote 26 episodes of Lawmen. He passed away in 2009 at age 84. The episode was directed by Richard Benedict. This is Benedict's third and final episode directing. We have a couple of returning guest stars this week. We have Rudy Vallee back as Winford Fletcher. You might remember him as the Mark in Dreadful Sorry Clementine. And Dennis Fimple is back as Kyle. We have Ford Rainey as Collins. It's a new character, but Rainey has been in 2 episodes so far, so we don't really need to talk about him again. We also have Broderick Crawford as Chester E. Powers. If Crawford is remembered today, it's either for A, his Oscar-winning performance in All the King's Men, or B, as the chief on the police drama Highway Patrol. Crawford was born to vaudeville parents, so he was predisposed for show business. He originated the role of Lenny in Of Mice and Men on Broadway. After working in film for about 20 years, he was beginning to lose steam in his career. Highway Patrol helped revive it, and he worked mostly in television after that. He did have another show that only lasted 1 season called King of Diamonds, about a diamond security guy who travels the world fighting diamond thieves. Yeah, it doesn't sound great. He guest starred on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., so he got the entire U.N.C.L.E. experience. He guest starred on Land of the Giants, The Name of the Game, Get Smart, Vegas, Fantasy Island, and Simon & Simon. Also, he was in the TV movie Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. I hear it's awful, but I would be lying to say I'm not curious about it. He also hosted SNL in 1977. I must have seen that episode, but I have no memory of it. Crawford passed away in 1986 at age 74. Oh, we're pretty short on information this week, so on with the show, I guess. No sneak peek this episode, just the boys catching a train and immediately being spotted by Winford Fletcher. And I'll be perfectly honest, it took me so long to remember this guy. I said it at the time, but Dreadful Sorry Clementine is far from my favorite episode, so I hardly rewatch it, and when I do, I forget most of it immediately, so yeah. Didn't realize that we already knew this guy until I'd seen this episode multiple times. There's a poker game going on, and a man named Chester Powers invites them to join in. They are happy to oblige. Fletcher watches from behind his newspaper and makes sure his gun is ready to go. Now, we get to the opening credits, but something is different in the narration this week. Instead of the line, "This made our 2 latter-day Robin Hoods," the line is now, "This made our 2 Kansas cousins." I did not remember that line getting changed until after Roger Davis came on to the show as Hayes. It actually really surprised me to hear it this time. I truly thought it was something they came up with for the Roger Davis era, but I guess not. Canon confirmation that Hayes and Kid are cousins. It's also the first time that it's ever been brought up, and it's fairly late into canon to be bringing it up, so I get why some fans just ignore it, but I'm simply not going to be that, because it's still stated, it's still canon. Sorry, my dog is enjoying the couch. Rudy Vallee gets the special guest star credit this week. At the poker game, Hayes wants it clarified if straights and flushes are allowed in the game. He's got that Hoyle rule committed to memory now, even though Powers has already stated that this game is for fun, not profit. They're playing for like a couple of dollars. At the next stop, Fletcher makes his move. He found out between Dreadful Sorry Clementine and this episode that the boys are actually Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry. How? I'm sure I don't know. Fletcher makes explicit references to the episode Dreadful Sorry Clementine, and my dumbass still didn't realize he was the same guy from that episode. Apparently he didn't end up going to prison, which is too bad, but he does say it cost him a small fortune to get out of that trouble. Hayes says that he and his cousin are due back in Black River for their grandma's funeral. I love how he always tries to play some sob story. Sick wife and kid, dead grandma. And it is notable to me that Hayes refers to Kid as his cousin. Granted, he's trying to feed Fletcher a story, but besides the day they hanged Kid Curry, which was its own separate issue, it's the first time he or Kid have ever talked about being related. Fletcher isn't buying what they're selling and orders them on their feet. Wow, my dog is on one tonight. They move to comply when Powers intervenes. He asks Fletcher to at least let them stay until they reach Black River. Fletcher will not be dissuaded until Powers says he's got a gun under the table pointed right at him, a .60 caliber Derringer. Fletcher relents. He says fine, they'll settle it at Black River. But then he leaves that train car. Which, why? Wouldn't he stay there and keep an eye on them so they don't, escape? They thank Powers for helping them out, and Kid says he's glad his bluff worked. Powers wants to know how Kid knew that he was bluffing about the gun. Well, that would be because they don't make a .60 caliber Derringer. I love that the Kid knows that. It makes sense that he knows that, so I just love that they threw that in. Their relief is short-lived, unfortunately, because Powers absolutely believed Fletcher about the two of them being Hayes and Curry. And they surprisingly copped to it. Hayes wants to know why Powers, a banker, would help them. Powers says he needs their help, and he also drags their aliases again. I love it when people do that, because they're always like, it was Lom's idea. They're suspicious of any job he would want them to do, because it's probably illegal. He says if they help him, he'll pay them $500 apiece. They're going along with him to Red Gap. Don't worry about Fletcher. He will distract him while they escape during a crawl the train has to make. That will leave them 7 miles out of Red Gap. Hayes winces at the thought of walking 7 miles, and honestly, same. Just take me to jail. Fuck that. Anyway, once they get to Red Gap, he will meet them at the hotel. Cut to that night, and I guess a distraction wasn't even needed, since the next thing we see is Fletcher frantically waking Powers up, yelling that Hayes and Kid aren't on the train anymore. So Fletcher was just not paying attention at all. Man, he sucks. And he says he's gonna sue Powers for obstructing justice or whatever. Powers apologizes for losing them, but since there were no witnesses to this event except Hayes and Kid, who aren't exactly gonna rush out to court to back up Fletcher, he suggests they settle the matter personally. And Fletcher is very easily bought. That I do remember from Dreadful Sorry Clementine. Powers tells him that he will tell the sheriff at Red Gap, and Fletcher can set up a posse to go look for the boys. What exactly their plan is, we're not privy to just yet. The boys do make it to town on foot in the dark. How did they see? What? Ugh. The sheriff stops them as soon as they get there. He wants to know why they just walked into town. Who does that? They claim that their horses were stolen. The sheriff lets them go, but he wants a full report from them. Yeah, they'll get around to it. Poor boys. Their feet really are hurting them. They're walking funny and everything. They get a hotel room, and Hayes watches as Powers enters the bank while Kid nurses his tender little feetsies. While waiting for Powers to contact them, the boys play poker. Hayes gets up and looks at the kid's hand and mocks him for it. He says, "Haven't I taught you anything?" "Yeah, kid, you should really leave the gambling to Hayes." They get a note from Powers telling them to meet him at the granary 3 miles out of town. Oh, and also burn that note. They don't like this, but they go there anyway. Why? Just leave town. What's more, they stay out there waiting for him for an extra half hour. It's not until they see a posse in the distance that they think, maybe we've been had and should get the fuck out of here. They go back to town where everyone is all worked up into a frenzy because guess what? Somebody robbed the bank. And who do you think it was? And who do you think is gonna get blamed for it? They finally do a smart thing and jump a train to get out of there. They get to another hotel room in presumably another town, and Kid is trying to figure out which train will get them as far away as possible as soon as possible. But Hayes has some more bad news. They made the front page. Powers and Fletcher reported that Hayes and Curry robbed the bank and got away with a record amount, the biggest bank heist west of the Mississippi. Well, now they're pissed. They make their way back to Red Gap and break into Powers' house. Sneaking around his house goes on for quite a while, but when they finally burst into his study, guns drawn, Powers is waiting for them. He said he expected them 3 nights ago. He offers them brandy and a seat. Hold on. If he expected them 3 nights ago, has he just been sitting there smugly for 3 nights just in case they showed up? I wonder what time he gave up and went to bed. Anyway, they tell him that they've got an amnesty deal and he's ruining it for them. Powers scoffs at the idea. There's no way the governor is going to give them amnesty. He'd be run out of office. But the boys are still believers. I mean, I guess, what choice do they have? Powers is offering them a better deal. He goes to open a drawer, and it's Hayes who pulls his gun, just in case that's what Powers is going for. I thought it was interesting, because that's normally a kid move. But instead of a gun, Powers pulls out $20,000 in cash and offers it to them. As part of the $80,000 from the bank robbery, he kept the other $60,000 for himself. And the $500,000 in stocks and bonds that were stolen? Well, they were already long gone. He used them as collateral for bad business deals. Okay, so he's just terrible at his job. Got it. And the robbery fixed everything for him. Basically, they really have no choice but to go along with this, because if not, they'll go to jail. He tells them to just take the money and go to South America. The kid says they don't want to live in South America. They want to live in North America. First of all, going to South America has been their backup plan on more than one occasion. So, what is he talking about? And it will be their backup plan later. Second of all, what's the difference? Just learn Spanish. Maybe he's still smarting from the whole Santa Marta incident. Kid is really getting riled up and yelling at Powers, but Hayes breaks in very calmly and says, "No, this is a great deal. Powers has given them the solution to all their troubles." Then he says Kid has no imagination, but he has one solid virtue, and that is, quote, "he listens to me." Wow. So there's an episode of Breaking Bad where Gus asks Walt why Jesse, as in why does he keep Jesse, a known fuck-up, around? And Walt says, "Because he does what I say." And anyway, Hayes' line just gave me flashbacks to that. Not that I'm comparing Hayes to Walter White or his relationship with the kid to the incredibly toxic and abusive relationship Walt had with Jesse. It's just a really mean thing to say in both cases. Like, I keep this person around because they shut up and do as they're told? Anyway, the guys take the money and leave. They've hopped yet another train, and Kid asks why Hayes agreed to the plan. And Hayes is basically like, well, at least now we've got $20,000. Kid then invokes their grandpa. He specifically says, "our grandpa." Another reference to them being related. What is going on? Why did they decide this was a thing halfway through season 2? Hayes comes up with a plan involving the Devil's Hole gang. He wants 2 of them to pose as Hayes and Kid. Where's Wheat? You know, their leader. Who knows? Earl Holliman isn't coming back. He's too busy. They have to pose as them around the town of Harristown on the 10th, and they'll give them each $100. Kyle's in. I love Kyle, and I love that Dennis Fimple was willing to pop in for episodes for just like 1 or 2 scenes. They go and see Fletcher to offer him the $20,000 in exchange for Fletcher telling the truth about the bank robbery. But Fletcher doesn't want to admit that he lied. Okay, that's fine with them. They'll use Plan B, which they'll explain to him later. Plan B is apparently them actually breaking into the Red Gap Bank, blowing the safe, and taking all the money. They do it the same way Hayes did in How to Rob a Bank in One Hard Lesson. And poor Kid has to pump the air out, and he gets all nervous when the nitro comes out. They go back to Fletcher in their nice clothes and tell him that the bank was robbed again, and Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry have solid alibis thanks to Kyle and the others, and they're going to pin this one on Powers. Fletcher gets all excited to have the $20,000 now and agrees to help out the boys. He's dumb. They played him before. What makes him think they won't play him again? Anyway, Fletcher's still nervous about the whole thing, but Kid tells him not to worry. They've got it all worked out and only told Fletcher what he needs to know. The 3 of them get back on the train to Red Gap, and Hayes and Kid break into Powers' house in the dead of night yet again. I swear, 1/3 of this episode is just them sneaking around places in the dark. They also keep cutting to Powers in bed, tossing and turning. They're looking for his safe, and in the process end up making a loud noise. Powers wakes up, grabs his shotgun, and searches his house. Luckily, they're able to get out the window and watch as Powers checks his safe hidden behind a painting. So at least they know where that is now. Kid argues that they can't go back in there, and maybe South America isn't so bad. Kid, make up your mind. Anyway, Hayes nixes that idea because Fletcher and the sheriff are already on their way to Powers' house, so he insists that they've got to go through with it. Powers goes back to bed, but Kid and Hayes can't really see that, and Kid's worried he's just going to be waiting for them with a shotgun. But they do go back inside, and Hayes carefully starts trying to open the safe. We see Fletcher and the sheriff on their way when Hayes finally gets the safe open. Just as the sheriff knocks on the door, the guys try and put the money inside the safe, but it seems to be a little too small to hold it all. Powers comes down and lets Fletcher, the sheriff, and the assistant attorney general inside. Yikes. Finally, they're able to shove the whole bag of money inside and close it. They make a mad dash out of the room just as Powers and the others enter it. The Attorney General says that Fletcher swore under oath that he interfered with his attempts to arrest Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry, and suspects that he conspired to rob his own bank. Powers is like, well, he's a filthy liar. Which is true, he is, but not in this case. Anyway, Powers is like, go ahead, search the whole house, I've got nothing to hide. Hayes and Kid watch from behind a doorway, or I guess they listen from behind the doorway. Oh yeah, and Fletcher has been granted immunity. A slippery little bastard. Powers happily opens the safe for them, and is of course shocked that the money is inside. He's like, well, Hayes and Curry must have done it. And they're like, and this is always my favorite response from law enforcement when they do things like this, which is, why would they do that? Because the bad guys never have an answer. Oh, and what's more, there's money from the first robbery in that bag too. 20,000 of it. Thus exonerating Hayes and Kid from both robberies. So, while Fletcher may have gotten immunity, at least he didn't get 20,000 from the boys. While he was at the train station with Kid, Hayes went back and grabbed it. Fletcher finds a note in his own safe the next day when he rushes back to see if the money's really gone. The note reads that he really ought to get a new safe. Quote, even my friend What's-His-Name could have opened this one. Signed, J. Smith. Ha! Foiled again, Fletcher. While Powers is being carted away, the boys watch from the top of a hill, and Kid says that Powers should have known better than to get involved in another man's game. And then they ride off. The end. I like this episode. It is a step down from the last couple, but it's fun. There's not a whole lot to it, and they were definitely idiots for initially trusting Powers and doing what he told them to do, but I thought the way they got out of it was pretty clever. I truly can't believe they got Fletcher to trust them again. What a maroon. There is some good dialogue in here, not just with the guys, but the guest characters too. In fact, the line of the episode comes from Powers. Fletcher tells him early on, I can certainly understand how you became president of a bank, and Powers just replies, I inherited it. Damn you, nepotism. That's especially funny later on when we learn that he's actually really, really terrible at running his bank. And the episode goes to Hayes for coming up with yet another brilliant plan and getting some sick burns on the kid in. I love you, Kid. I just love to pick on you, too. Next time on Alias Smith & Jones, we've got another appearance by Harry Briscoe. And yet somehow he's not ruining everything? How can that be? Tune back in to find out. Research for this podcast comes mainly from the wonderful book Alias Smith & Jones, the story of two pretty good bad men, by Sandra K. Segala and Joanne M. Bagwell. Thanks for listening.